I'd like us to start off with a visualization. And if you're able to close your eyes and sit down somewhere, please do so. And if you're not able to do that at the moment, that's okay. Just be with what I'm saying the best you can. And as you close your eyes, I'd like to start off by having you take a breath in, let it out, and just start to notice the rhythm of your breathing, feeling what it's like on the in-breath within your body, and feeling the out-breath as well. And as you do this, keep your eyes closed, and I'd like you to visualize a tree with me. And this tree is going to be in a field, a grassy field. It's just a single tree, and maybe you're 30, 40, 50 feet back from it, so you can see the full tree. And it can be any kind of tree, a tree with leaves. And just think of it as a kind of blurry, green, roundish circle with a trunk, and then maybe a ground underneath it. Very simple visualization. And what I want you to do is notice as you breathe in how the tree grows with the seasons. So you take a breath in, and the tree's leaves expand, its branches grow. And as you breathe out, its leaves fall off. You can see its bare branches, and winter comes. In each breath in that you take, the tree grows and expands. The leaves bloom, and the breath out, the tree goes dormant for the winter. And so each breath cycle that you're taking within your body is a year passing by. In, there goes spring and summer, out, fall and winter. Spring and summer, fall and winter. And just notice for a moment what the tree does over time. Maybe with one breath you see the effects of the wind and rain, a storm that knocks some branches off. Another breath out and you start to notice, maybe in winter, how an animal claws into the tree, or birds look for insects buried within its bark and leave holes. A breath in and the tree expands even bigger from a year where there was lots of rain. But then, as the leaves fall off, it deals with the intense cold of one winter. And again, and you see this expansion and then this contraction as you breathe out. And eventually what you see is that the tree is growing old. The leaves don't grow with the same vigor they once did. The breath out, and there's almost this worry that the tree may not grow back fully the next year. And eventually, as you breathe in and you breathe out, and the years continue to flicker by, the tree stops growing. It's just bare bark, a tangle of branches. And then with one in-breath, you notice the next year how the tree falls over onto the ground. Another breath in, and then you see all the insects and animals deal with the shape of the tree, what's remaining on the ground, with the bark, with what remains, and take care of it. And they turn it back into the soil, making what was once this tree into a mound of earth, falling back to where it originally came from, to allow a new tree or new plant to reappear in its place. If you'd like to now, you can go ahead and open your eyes, come out of that visualization for a bit. The reason that I chose us to go through that here today was that as I was walking into my office this morning to record this podcast, I was very much aware of the impermanence of the building that I work in. And this is a practice that I have throughout all of my life, that I try to intentionally notice how things are not fixed through time, that things change. that the building that I work in, which is a very large complex, it's been here for a long time here in Eugene, um, in 100 years, it probably won't be here. I don't know what'll be here. A field, a bigger building. I have no idea. But it'll fade away for sure. And this isn't some kind of, meditation on, things just falling away or them being negative, or seeing the world in this way to sort of like as a kind of expression of depression or something. I think it could be easily read that way. Actually, it's the opposite for me. That coming into contact very deeply with the impermanence of all things, from the building that I work in to the relationships that I have in my life, they really help me come into contact very directly with how vigorous our life can be, how alive it can feel. And for me, really the root in some ways of authenticity, and where I find a lot of the energy within the existential project, is actually to touch into this kind of continual turning over of life that's happening all around us all the time. And I really see this impermanence as being a really important touch point within my day to keep me going. Now, as we turn our attention towards the kind of center idea within this talk, that's something I've titled The Third Actor in my notes here. I think you'll see how this idea is connected, but maybe not immediately. This idea of the third actor comes to me through my clinical work as a therapist, in a pattern that I've been recently noticing in my clients. And I don't know if this pattern will hold over time or not. It's particularly prominent in 2026, January 2026, as I'm recording this. And the pattern of this third actor, what I've noticed is that people will maybe have 4 or 5 sessions with me. And somewhere around that, as the relationship's beginning to deepen and the work's beginning to sort of take off, I notice this sort of intrusion of artificial intelligence into the conversation, where the client is beginning to talk to the AI really a lot about the ideas that we're exploring in therapy, and that I'm having to navigate not only the client's responses to my work, but also their interpretation of what AI is telling them or not telling them about what we're doing. And it's becoming quite an interesting problem. And in some ways, this is a good problem, because I do believe in its best use, artificial intelligence, thinking about systems like ChatGPT or Claude, they really can give us new insights and expand our awareness some. But here's the thing, and this is the point that gets really difficult to navigate for me, is that those systems are not alive. They're generative. That's why they're called generative AI. They take a context prompt from a user, and they interpret that through a persona mask, and then reflect something back about data wrapped in a layer of context that makes it feel human. But the systems are utterly inhuman. There's not any humanity really in them. And further, there's no being in them. There's nothing actually alive or conscious. It's just sort of a reflection back to us based, again, on that prompt that we interpret as humans as assigning sort of a aliveness to. It tricks us. And the problem here, the chief problem, is that people think it's more than it is. And there's a kind of bypassing that is going on. I keep seeing this pattern where individuals interpret the cognitive sort of processing that can happen with AI as if they completely understand an idea. And if you talk to any therapist for any length, you'll start to understand that this is not actually the goal of therapy. It's not about understanding an idea. That's a provisional truth. The more important thing, the thing that my work really drives towards, and I think any good therapy should drive towards, is a true embodiment of our understanding and a true sort of articulation of that truth through our whole life, body and mind. I just use the word being. I like this word a lot. Being completely yourself, being completely involved in the process of being part of your life. And there's this tension where, the client comes in and I can tell they've had this conversation with an AI, and I'll even ask about it sometimes. And we have to unpack that and sort of do a lot of work correctively to refocus it back on the therapeutic alliance that I have with them and helping them come back to really what's true and authentic within the relationship, and then take what lessons we can learn from the information they have gathered outside a session, but then apply it practically to their life. Again, here, the AI is sort of a tool. It can be a useful entity, but you have to be very careful with it because you can easily misconstrue what it's saying, and it gives a lot of false ideas. And it just becomes a very difficult space to navigate as a therapist. It's almost as if there's a really, really, really bad therapist that you're also having to work with. It's like I have a client and, I'm working with them, and then they're going to see this other person, a few times a week that's just like horrific, like the world's worst therapist. And then they're coming back in and I'm having to triage this whole thing sometimes. And it's kind of comical when I think about it this way. That's probably not completely true what I'm saying either, but it does give me pause about where we are in the aggregate as a culture. Now, there's this other pattern that's connected that maybe is even more important to what I just named about the third actor, right? About AI in this way. And this is when I think about what AI represents in terms of its connection to electronic stimulation as a whole. And how, as I see it, I really see a continuum where on one end, things like alcohol and drugs exist. And then there's these behavioral addictions where electronic stimulation really gets into the picture. Things like excessive video game use, social media use, AI use. And there's a lot of different nuance and complexity in that terrain. But I hope you can just see there is sort of a connection there. That when taken to their edges, it's very hard for me to see a difference between, say, someone who is drinking or using cannabis, multiple times a day versus somebody who's on social media, who's completely, their whole waking experience is wrapped up in a kind of electronic mediation and stimulation. And again, I'm talking about extremes here, right? I'm not talking about occasional use of those systems. I'm talking about someone who is really mediating their whole life through them. And they begin to start to look like third actors as well, and certainly you can see how drugs are like this, that they take over people's whole lives. And in the same way, electronic means can do it too. And I think for some, AI becomes incredibly attractive in the way they filter all of their experience through. Now I'd like to change directions a little bit and also go a little bit deeper. And I want to kind of connect what I'm talking about with drugs and the ways it gets used socially with AI a little more specifically. And again, this comes through clinical observation. And there's a pattern that I've noticed in not all, but some of the clients where it appears that the use of artificial intelligence will often ramp up in between sessions that I have with them. So they're talking about using AI to digest and talk about the session content, often around like session 4 to 6, somewhere in that range, right? So I'm thinking about weekly sessions here. And again, this is my cadence. This may or may not apply to anyone else's life. It's just the pattern I'm noticing. And then as the work deepens further and a really strong alliance gets built, maybe by session 10, 15, something like that, the usage of AI stops, or it doesn't, it's not in the picture anymore. not in the same way, or not at all. That third actor almost disappears or completely disappears. And it's very interesting because what you see in patterns of often addiction, where people really want to change an addictive pattern. So I'm thinking of, say, I don't know, like cannabis use, for example. People will come to therapy with this problem and they really want to stop. And so then you see this kind of process where often their usage actually will ramp up as they get closer to stopping. And then as the therapeutic alliance builds and kind of we build momentum around it, the usage starts to fade away and then eventually cease if it's something they really want to do. And of course, addictions are very complex, but that's just another pattern that seems like a parallel that I've noticed. There's something similar there. And the kind of, if I was going to draw, kind of connect those two things the way I would say it in a very abstract sense, is that it appears as if the electronic third actor, a drug or AI or some other thing, is sort of the thing the individual is relying on to get through their existence, to helping support them. But as they feel more supported and more trusting of another person, someone they can really be in relationship with, they can connect with in this level of an authentic encounter, that beingness, then their need for that fades away. It often really changes. And of course, I'm really generalizing here, and I have a very small sample set. I'm just one person out there in the world, and who knows if other people are seeing similar patterns. But I'm left to draw this kind of hypothesis that really at the root of a lot of these ways in which we mediate our existence with electronic means, they're really fundamentally replacements for genuine human connection and genuine, authentic relationship with ourselves. And that the more that we contact relationships that are meaningful and really built on this core tenet of being present with ourselves, being authentic, being connected, being really concerned about our existence at this deep layer, the more that these other things, these electronic things, these substances, whatever, they become less and less interesting. They don't quite have the same grip on us anymore. Because I think actually the truth is, just like AI is not really a being, it has no internal experience, drugs are the same way. And the same is true as with all electronic means of stimulation. If you play a lot of video games, for example, they get incredibly boring. They're so predictable. They're not that interesting. They're just sort of, they kind of start to feel like a casino, like a slot machine or something. And the same is true of a drug. Drugs have very predictable patterns of how they come up and how you come down from them, the negative consequences plus the euphoria you experience. And it gets worn out. It's very boring. They're not alive. They're not ever changing. And the same is true of AI, actually, that we think of it as such a novel experience right now because it's new in our culture. It's a new thing currently, but it's kind of dead already. It's great that you can gather more knowledge and it has utility as a tool, and I'm not debating any of that. I mean, heck, I use it in my own life to help understand things that I don't completely understand right now. But you shouldn't mistake it for something that's all infinitely novel or is going to solve every problem, because it doesn't actually provide for you the thing that you really want, which is that authentic encounter with existence itself, a sort of touching the ground of what we are wrapped up in a more fundamental way. Now, I'm speaking abstractly here yet again about what we really desire, but I'd like to give you a more concrete example here as we end this talk today. So, last night, I was waiting for my partner to come home, and it was getting late and I was hungry, and so I was going to eat dinner. And, I had some choices there. I had made food for both of us and knew that she would have food after, she got home, and I'm sitting there alone. And I could sit down at the dinner table and I could get out my phone and I could endlessly watch YouTube videos to cure some of the boredom I was experiencing. Or I could just sit there with the food and be there with the raw kind of experience itself. And I chose, as I not often do, actually, to just be with the experience, to not do the thing that felt more like a distraction, just to be there, not to do anything but just eat. And then I decided after that to not do anything but just clean the kitchen. And then I decided to not do anything but just be in my living room and just be present with myself, just sitting there. And I could have chosen all sorts of ways to distract myself. I could have listened to something, could have watched something. I could call somebody. It goes on and on and on, the different ways you could do this. But I really wanted to just touch into deeply what is present within me, what's alive, what's there in a kind of direct way. And there's so many opportunities in my own life where I could turn towards things that are distractions, but instead to actively choose to come back to just what is here right now. Just being there, being present. And it really goes back to the beginning of this talk too, that to be okay with being in contact with what's impermanent, what's ephemeral. And the reality of just, say, sitting in my living room, doing nothing, it contacts the real truth of my existence, the kind of simplicity that I live by, but also a kind of recognition that there's nothing else beyond this. And that if I was to distract myself from it, I kind of just lose myself. And when I come back into really authentic connection with who I am and what I'm being in the world, I actually feel a little bit better as I do this. Things feel okay. Whereas the more that I fall into traps of distractions, that electronic stimulation, that whatever the thing is that I want to find a way out of my experience with, I inevitably feel like there's a deeper layer of anxiety and a kind of pressure in my life that I just don't really want anymore. To set that down where I can. This is just a small example from my own life and how I think about this. But I would really encourage you, as you listen to this talk today, to find places where you can take a step back from the ways you're wrapped up in the outside world of stimulation, however that appears to you. And that may appear through substances, that may appear through electronic means, that may appear through distractions that I haven't named here. And just when you notice yourself desiring one of those things, to see if you can catch yourself in it, and to notice that tension, and be okay, even for a moment, to sit with that tension and touch into it, to be with it, to see what it's telling you, what it's calling you towards, what that tension feels like is difficult. Why is it difficult? And to follow that, just be with it, and see where it goes. And not run to the AI and ask it what this means, but ask yourself deeply and presently what it means for you to be